play giant steps at 400 in any key, then I would have a penthouse in New York and maybe like a Cessna or something. As many of the students did, you know. And so I really love doing these things because I'm not so much older than you guys, and I was in an identical position than you in a far less beautiful country. And I think it's important that we kind of have a dialogue about the things that are on your minds and concerning you about surviving as a musician, you know, and hopefully thriving. For me, transparency is like the main thing. So I promise you, I'll be 100% honest. You can ask me anything. We don't even, in fact, we don't even have to talk about music business the whole time. You can ask me about whatever you want that you think you can gain from. But rather than me kind of hurling some predetermined lecture at you guys, I would rather just kind of have a conversation. I encourage you to ask the things that you really want to know about and things that really concern you, whether it's about money, or it's about art, or it's about spending a decade of your life in a van with a bunch of smelly guys, or anything else. I'm really here for you guys for the next 90 minutes, so just, you can fire away at me. I will. Before we open it up, I'll just kind of give you a super quick nutshell, like my musical life in a nutshell. I grew up in a family of non-musicians. My grandfather was like a band director for 4 years in a high school. Neither of my parents were professional musicians. My brother, who's 5 years older than me, is kind of a musical prodigy. He plays like 60 or 70 instruments from around the world at full proficiency and speaks 6 languages and married a Brazilian yoga teacher and generally lives a very terrible existence. So that was kind of the shadow that I grew up in. But he always had instruments around the house, and I was exposed to a lot of really cool stuff. So I kind of entered the music world through trying to be like my brother, you know, still working on the Brazilian yoga teacher. And then I went to college at 18 at the University of North Texas, the first jazz degree program in the world, back in 1947. No, I wasn't there in 1947. They offered the degree in 47, the first one in the world. And I did 4 years there. After my first year, I was such a terrible bass player because I kind of started playing guitar when I was like 14 or 15, and I switched to bass my senior year of high school for the reason that most people switch to bass, which is that there was no bass player in the band and too many guitar players. So then I went to college, having only been playing bass for like a year, and I was like 11 years behind everybody else in my age, you know, and I was awful. And I didn't make any of the ensembles my first year. And the thing is, like, if you don't do that, then they kind of encourage you to become an accountant or something, you know, kind of like gently shoo you away from the jazz department. But I was, you know, I was practicing like 8 to 10 hours a day, just trying to kind of catch up with everyone. And at the end of my first year, I was a little frustrated and not really having a lot of playing opportunities, so I started a band. Or just really invited like 9 of my friends from the school to come over to my house every week and read charts that I was writing. And we did a gig, I booked a gig in the basement of a little pizza place called J&J's Pizza on the Square, and because I thought the band was only going to last one gig, I called it Snarky Puppy. And so now I'm stuck with that stupid name 13 years later. And it just kind of grew out from there. That's kind of how it developed, you know. It started with 10 regular people. When we were in college, people would graduate, they would move, we'd get replacement people, and then by a kind of really fortunate twist of fate, I ended up right in the middle of this really rich gospel and R&B scene in Dallas. Like Erykah Badu's band and Kirk Franklin's band and Roy Hargrove's band and Marcus Miller's band and Fred Hammond's band, they're all Dallas, you know. In fact, most of them went to the same high school. So I kind of found myself in the middle of that scene, playing in churches, and did that for several years, and was mentored by a guy named Bernard Wright, who grew up in Jamaica, Queens, a really brilliant keyboard player, who grew up as part of the Jamaica Boys and Marcus Miller and Lenny White, and these guys that were doing this really beautiful melding of both straight-ahead jazz language and like R&B stuff. And then in the middle of this scene, these guys who like I grew up listening to, like people from the RH Factor and Erica's band and stuff, were like asking if they could play in my band because they thought it was cool or something. I still don't know why. I think because a lot of them were doing gigs like Snoop Dogg and like stuff where they're playing like the same thing every night. They wanted to be able to stretch. So I wasn't going to say no to them, even though I had a full band. So I was like, oh yeah, sure, come play. So the band kind of just started ballooning in terms of its membership. And we started touring so much that we did this kind of revolving door policy, you know, where if we did like a 2 or 3 month tour, maybe the drummer would play 6 weeks and then he'd leave and we'd bring in another drummer. So the band, this still happens today, we've got like 25 guys in regular rotation in the band. And over the course of this tour, we're in our 6th week and we've had 6 lineups, actually. So that's kind of like the way it works now. It works well for everybody for a lot of reasons. But so anyway, 13 years, the band's been around 13 years, we've done 11 records. We've toured every continent except Antarctica. We're still holding out for that. See? And I think we played about 1,300 gigs, which is a lot. In the band under that stupid name. And I like to do this. I mean, because like I said, I was in your spot, and I think it's important that we kind of have an honest conversation about what's on your minds. And if I can help you guys in any way, then I'm happy to. So that's it in a very large nutshell. It was a larger nutshell than I was hoping. So, who wants to kick things off? Yeah, what's up, man?
Hey,
Hey.
What did you start making money off music like straight away out of school, or were you like doing something else on the side, like full time or part time, as well as getting those gigs in Dallas?
So everyone in the band is a side band as well. You know, studio guys or touring guys mostly with other artists. For me, I mean, I started doing like what we call like jobbing gigs, you know, like playing at Kirby's Steakhouse from 9 to 12. No sticks allowed for the drummer, you know. Play with brushes. Can you play quieter, please? I'm not even playing. Quieter, please. You know, those kind of gigs. From the time I was 18 or 19. So I used those to fund my Snarky Puppy habit. You know what I mean? Like that the only way that I was able to for the band, the only way that the band was able to survive was from those other gigs. You know, when I first moved to New York, I was in Texas. I moved to Texas when I was 18 for school. I stayed there till I was 25. And then I moved to New York at 25 after I had the band about 7 years. And I joined a Jewish wedding band. I mean, I'm not Jewish, but what the hell? So I was sleeping on my guitar player, Bob Lanzetti, one of the guitar players from SNARKY. I was sleeping on his couch in the living room. The couch was like a V. It was the worst. You know, my back is still has flashbacks from these years. For about 1.5 years, 2 years maybe, I was paying $250 a month to sleep in the living room. You know, in a house with like 5 or 6 people. So like 7 a.m. and everybody started going to work. I had to wake up. It was interesting. And I was playing in this wedding band that kind of covered my costs every month. And a lot of the guys had some really weird jobs. Like actually, like until like 3 or 4 years ago, our horn section were caterers. So that was really demoralizing for them because they would be serving like cheese puffs at weddings that I was playing at. It's like a little bit of a little hierarchy there that was really entertaining for me. So we all had to, do that stuff for sure. And as far as making money from Snarky Puppy, I can tell you that I didn't pay I filed my first tax return 2 years ago. Which doesn't mean that I've been hoarding money like some, kind of like off the books thing. It means that I actually was in the red every year until 2 years ago, so there was no point paying taxes because I didn't earn anything. Not encouraging you to not pay taxes if you're not earning something, because I had to pay a bunch of penalties just for not filing, But Snarky Puppy was in the red business for almost 11 years. And what was really interesting about it is that when I say in the red, I mean like really in the red. You take all the money that I made playing with other artists and studio sessions and teaching and arranging and producing and all that, and then then you put that on top of my loss every year, and it barely covered it. So, I mean, catastrophic losses every year, you know. And what was really interesting about it was that the curve of it was like, it's so funny how, like perception is, and it's like, what I learned is basically nobody cares about you until one person cares about you, and then everybody cares about you.
Who was that one person then?
I don't know, but I want to buy him a beer. You know, but it's kind of just one of those things that like you're just perceived as kind of untouchable or something, or insignificant or unimportant. And then at a certain moment, all of a sudden, you're just considered important, and then kind of the penny drops.
Wow.
And for us, it was like, really like a decade of just playing to no one. You know, but there was like a steady, it was always incremental gain. You know, and each year it was like, I remember the first year that we went in the black, I think it was like $615 in the black. Like, at the end of the year, it was like we profited $600. That's so awesome. You know, and then the next year we profited like $150,000. And it was like, wait, what? Like, how did that happen? And it was just because it's like once the, you know, the tipping point, if you guys are Malcolm Gladwell fans, I don't know if you know this author, really great author from New York, it's kind of just one of those things that like, it's just, the water builds up and builds up and builds up, and then the dam opens, and then all of a sudden, you guys are here wanting, well, I don't know, maybe you're required to be here, but I would assume that you're because you want to hear me talk because you assign some kind of value or importance to me. But 4 years ago, this room would be empty. You know, but the crazy thing is that once this room is full, every room is full. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as an artist, it's kind of like your in a business sense, the place you want to get to is where people assign value to you, because then you can just go around and reap some kind of reward for that value. But it doesn't come from being clever or business savvy. It comes from offering something artistic that people assign value to. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but okay. There's got to be like a little bit of business savviness. You've got to sort of understand the industry. You've got to sort of understand how to, you know, leak what you've got into that.
Yes, I agree 100%. But that has to be based on the art.
Yeah.
Right? So you say yeah, of course, but it's amazing how many people don't think about it like that. They think when they start a project or they make a record or they form a band, they're not thinking, what is going to make me the most musically happy? Right? I mean, the number of groups that I've been a part of where I was like, man, we should add this instrument or whatever. And they're like, no. The more people we have, it's going to be hard with money, and traveling is going to be much easier, you know, split the money 3 ways than 13 ways. And I'm like, I mean, is money what we're after? Is that why we started playing music? You know, money is a consequence, hopefully. I mean, maybe not, you know, of the work that you put in as an artist, but just be mindful of that when you're making decisions. You know, we call it music business, right? So the music is the first word. So just be thinking that when you make decisions about what kind of album you're going to make. You have to balance it with reality. You know, of course, I want to make a record in a space shuttle, something that'd be awesome, but I can't afford to do that, so I'm not going to do that. But so be realistic, but also understand that like the art is the center of everything. You know, and in fact, the most risky and kind of expensive decisions we've made from a business standpoint have been the most successful ones. The ones that are kind of like intuitively the worst ideas have been the best ones. Like the idea of bringing an audience into a recording studio and filming us playing, even though we had really no money, you know, and that studio was catching on fire literally as we were doing things because we were working it so hard. Like the headphone boxes would start smoking in between songs and take a beer break, and you know, I mean, that was the smartest thing we had ever done at that point. That was like our 4th record, like 7 or 8 years ago, and we put that on YouTube, and then we started kind of attracting some attention from people around the world, which was really cool, you know, and that became our medium, and we kind of started honing in on that. But the bottom line being, yes, you have to be business savvy, but that's not what's gonna make you successful. You know, people love, we're artists, we're musicians. One of the guys in our band was having a conversation with Stevie Wonder a couple weeks ago, and he said, if you can give me one nugget, like, what can you say? And he said, musicians are the glue of society. You know, like we glue people together as a community, you know? And I thought that was like I guess you would expect that Stevie Wonder would say something deep in that kind of situation, but it was so cool to me that, like, really thinking about that, and like that's kind of like our responsibility, you know? And at the end of the day, people are more interested in the Beatles than they are in Drake. You know what I mean? And actually, long term, the Beatles make a lot more money than Drake, or the Backstreet Boys, or whatever. You know, like a flavor of the month. I'm not saying that Drake sucks. I'm just saying, like, he's going through a machine, right? You're not going to compare him to Shostakovich, you know, or something that's like real art. And when people are super inspired by art, they will want to help you. They will offer their floor or their couch or their bed for you when you don't have it, when you play in their town. And they will tell everyone that they know about you, and they will spread the word about your music. And, you know, that's the strongest weapon that you have is your art. You know, and the business structure has to be entirely based upon that. And your job as the business person or the branding person is to figure out how to best communicate, how to best build the bridge between your art and your audience, if that makes sense. But you have to start thinking about it as, what is my art? Not what is working right now. Oh, okay, Twitter is a thing right now, so we're just going to tweet every 5 minutes. You know, that might not be the right thing for based on your art. Maybe your fan base, who cares? They don't care. You know, like, you know, I don't know, Graham Nash's fan base, like, how active are they on Twitter? Right? Because the kind of music that he's offering, it all has to be unified. Unity's like the really big thing. That helps. Man, I don't even remember what the question was. I was just there.
That's okay, we get answers.
Yeah, answers to questions you didn't ask.
Yeah,
okay, cool. Yeah, either of y'all.
How much of the Snarky Puppy, let's say business arm, I don't know if it's like divided like that, but how much of it is you versus management versus other members of the band versus agents, and what roles do they play in getting the art across that bridge?
In the beginning, I did everything. And the band is so glad that that's not the case anymore. And no one is happier about it than me. I was the manager and the booking agent for about a decade. And the accountant. Well, really bad. Slowly, about 4 years ago, we got a booking agent, so like after 9 years, and then a year later, I hired a manager, and now we have like a team, you know, like I run a record label too, called Ground Up Music, and so we have the label president, we have the label manager, we have two accountants, one overseas, one domestic, an overseas booking agent and a domestic booking agent, a manager, and then like a guy who does a guy and a girl who do our education stuff, our book clinics, or masterclasses, or camps, or stuff like that. So now it's like kind of a big team, it's like 10 people. And they're amazing. I mean, I handpicked all of them. I knew them all very well before I brought them in and trusted them. And the real common theme with all of them is that they're great people. Our manager never managed a band before. He was a DJ, actually, like a radio DJ, a prominent one in the UK for like soul and jazz and stuff. But he also promoted gigs on and off, and he promoted one of our shows, and it was just amazing. I was like, this is like a good human being. And that is like, or I really feel like I can say that about everyone in the band, our sound engineers, our crew, the people like set up the, you know, our guy, like our drum tech, like everyone is like a really good person. And that's more important than experience, I think, because you can develop experience, you can develop skills, but you can't develop integrity or honesty, or good-naturedness, or, you know. So that's like a really big thing. Because also when you're traveling around and you're stressed out, you're underslept, and the gear is broken, and the hotel is smelly, and you know, when all that stuff's going wrong, and then you're around people that you don't like, you know. That's rough, it sucks, you know. So if I can control, I have a lot of control over our reality, you know. And so I try to exert it in that way. I try to just kind of put everybody in a good position. But for many years I was doing it all and it was awful. We just survived, barely survived by the skin of our teeth. Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, obviously, you guys have a very busy touring schedule and stuff like that. Where and how do you get the time and facility to continue to write new material? And is that mainly coming from you? Is that coming from lots of different people in the band? How does that work?
We have very little time to really do anything, you know. I think you guys, I don't mean to sound like, oh, we're so busy and important. I mean, it's just, when you're traveling, you just have no time, you know. And we try to use it the best we can. Like if stuff has to get written, we have little MIDI controllers. We like annoy the people next to us on our flights, you know, like with the laptop and the MIDI controller on the planes or on buses or whatever, if stuff needs to get written. But how many of you guys are in school here right now? Most people. Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is probably gonna be the only period of your life that you have where your main focus of your time and energy is gonna be to improve the music. And I'm gonna go on another limb and say that most likely you'll be pulling from these years for the rest of your life. Like, as your reserve. I mean, I practice, and I know that, I mean, I was talking a minute ago about Yannick Wizdala, who came here, right? You guys, he's a great bass player, and Yannick's a buddy of mine, and he's like, wakes up at 5 in the morning and like plays tennis for 2 hours, and then he practices bass for 2 hours. He's like one of these guys that does all this stuff, you know? And it's amazing that he has that discipline, but it's important to him, and so he makes sure that he has that time, right? For me, I have to do a lot of administrative stuff, and also I'm a producer and arranger, and like, I do a lot of emailing, you know, and phone calling, and it's not the most glamorous thing, but I don't have time to practice. And writing, I generally write most of the material that we record when I show up to the studio a few days before the other guys. Like, I do it super last minute, and that sucks. It's, you know, I mean, the Metropole record, I had to write 60 minutes of music for a symphony orchestra, and I did that like the month before the session on a MIDI controller, like on tour. It was not ideal. You know, you imagine like, oh, composing for a symphony, and you've got like a, you know, a baby grand and a quill pen, a glass of rosé, you know. And it was like, for me, it was like sweatpants and like a MIDI controller on like a shitty Air Berlin flight, you know. That was just like that was that experience for me. But the thing about me is like, I make it work. Like, I make it happen. You know, if there's a thing that has to be done, I make it happen, even if it's not glamorous or ideal. What was I talking about before that? Do you remember?
Just about who, or like how you get the time to
Yeah.
stuff, and who does it, and is it just you? Or
And about you guys, here, now. I don't practice, almost ever. I almost never, ever have to. And in fact, when I start to practice, I feel guilty because I know there's these emails that are just being like, sending little waves over to me, like, don't ignore me, you know? And so I have to do that stuff. For you guys, hopefully your administrative workload won't be anywhere near mine for the rest of your lives. I wish that, I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy, you know? But I guarantee you your lives are gonna get more, I don't wanna say complicated, but you're not gonna have, it's not gonna be like, oh, it's Monday, I get to wake up and try to get better at music all day. You know, that's not gonna be like that for the rest of your life. So take advantage of it now. Like every guy in my band really spent 10 hours on their instrument per day for 4 years of their lives. You know, Saturday and Sunday, you know, like 7 days a week, like playing, practicing, transcribing, listening, learning, studying, all day, every day. And that's just the beginning of making music. Just because you do that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're a great musician. Then you have to figure out a way to connect that with yourself emotionally and to kind of create that, like, I hear it, or like, you know, I feel it in my heart, and then I hear it in my head, and then because I've studied my instrument and practiced, I know how to express it, and it's like this one fluid thing. The best musicians are that way. You know, you see them, and you see Stevie Wonder sing, and it's like, he's not thinking, am I hearing the sharp 11 in my head? You know, it's just like he hears something that happens on stage, and he feels it, and then it goes, whoom, like right out, and then you're in the audience like, oh my God. You feel like you're part of a moment. It's not some practiced routine that's on a Pro Tools rig from some guy hiding in a corner of the stage. You know what I mean? It's real shit, you know? And that's what we all want to be, I assume, as musicians, right? That's what got us excited about music in the first place, is we want to create that moment with our musicians around us and our audience, that we share this unique thing in this instant that's unique to that instant and will never occur again, you know, and we try to kind of have that thing that makes us all excited about being humans and being alive, and it's inspiration, you know, that's what we're after, right? It would be awesome to have the time to work on that every day, but it's going to get more complicated when you leave. There's going to be rent, there's going to be bills, there's going to be health stuff, family stuff, business stuff, developing your brand. It's not just going to be like, oh, I have this playing exam and then I have 3 hours to practice, you know. So really take advantage of that now. Like, work hard now and love it. It's not like work. I mean, it's music, right? It's like awesome and fun, right? Right? I hope. Okay, cool. But you're going to be pulling from that. I pull from that every night. I the stuff if I wouldn't have put that time in college, it would be bad. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Let's say you got a demo of what you'd consider radio-friendly music. What would you say is the next step, or the next few steps for getting your music out there?
If you already have something like a demo of some radio-friendly stuff that you, the next step, there's so, you know, the world of music is like many-layered. You know, so we've done everything through this kind of like grassroots, independent, non-label, kind of fan-by-fan world. When I moved to New York, another one of the really weird jobs that I had was I was the musical consultant for, how do you explain this delicately? Okay, let's say that you grew up in New York and your grandmother just kind of like donated $90 million worth of art to the Modern Museum because she just had it laying around and she didn't really need it. And you're turning 20 and you want to be a pop star. So for your birthday, your mom wants to make you a pop star, and she hires like the lawyer from the Rolling Stones and 2 like image consultants and a high-powered manager, and all you need now, a songwriter, a producer, and they put these songs together that you don't really have any emotional attachment to, but they're really kind of poppy and they think it's going to be the next big thing, and then they need to hire a band for you. Well, I would be the one that would come in and sit through the auditions all day and like consult on what band to hire, which was really funny. Like at a panel, you know, of all these people, like image consultants and stuff, with the artist next to me or whatever, and then these bands would do their auditions, and they'd finish playing, and they'd go, okay, Mike, what did you think? You know, and I'd be like, well, the drummer doesn't really have great time. They'd be like, but did you see his jeans? Those were amazing. They had lights on them. That was amazing. You know, and I'd be like, whoa, okay. That was like my welcome to like the mainstream pop world, you know? And I did some tours with artists like this, you know, just, I was like paying rent, and it was fun. I mean, like, dude, I'm like, you know, I was saying all that shit about Drake and Shostakovich earlier, but like, I love music, and I love pop music, and like, you know, some of when I get on an airplane, I don't necessarily listen to like Gamelan or something. I listen to Michael Jackson or you know. But that world is a very different world from the grassroots world. And it's kind of hard to, it's just the difference between doing this kind of thing, which is kind of the organic grassroots kind of world approach, and this kind of thing, which is like, I got a manager or a label or someone who can place my stuff somewhere. And it just depends on the demographic that you're going for with that music and what it sounds like. I mean, if it sounds like Katy Perry, there's a certain route. If it sounds like Bjork or Radiohead, which is still pop music, you know, it's another route. Or if it sounds like Imogen Heap or St. Vincent, or like that kind of world of pop, then that's another thing. Labels, the label thing is, are you guys like aware about what's going on in the music world right now with like labels and streaming and money and, yeah? Sort of. Okay, so well, I mean, I don't have the answers, but I do know that, sorry man, we're gonna sidetrack for a minute and then just bring me right back home afterward. I'd just be like, dude, you didn't answer my question. Oh, wow. So this is a huge thing. I would really encourage you guys to start reading articles about streaming and sustainability and what's happening with Spotify and Pandora and YouTube, who I have kind of a weird relationship with because they've kind of given us our career in a way, because these videos, like any of you who have heard of us have probably checked us out on YouTube, right? But YouTube is like the absolute worst offender of all the kind of streaming ethics, or lack thereof.
In terms of paying artists?
Not just payment, like racketeering, like really, you know. So the way it's working right now, just so you guys know, is that up until I went to college in like around 2000, people bought records, right? And the only way that you heard music was either on the radio, which generated a lot of income through publishing, or by buying an album. And then Napster kind of started happening, and the piracy thing kind of came up. And the streaming thing has been kind of brought in as a way to replace, to kind of...
Legitimize.
Yeah, legitimize is a great word. Or like legally replace the piracy epidemic, right? Because now it's like, okay, now people are paying, and this stuff's legal, and it's all okay. But, you know the amount, do you know the average amount you get paid per stream on Spotify?
It's a fraction of a cent, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is one of the smallest fractions of a cent. It's 0.0019 cents per stream.
Yeah, Pharrell made nothing out of Happy.
Yeah, I think Pharrell made like,
$4 grand?
yeah, I think it was somewhere, yeah, it might have been like $10,000 or something, or maybe less, for like hundreds of millions of streams. You know, and if you, maybe this isn't a fair thing to say, but if you would say, okay, well, for hundreds of millions of people to hear Inner City Blues by Marvin Gaye in the 70s, he would have made hundreds of millions of dollars versus enough money to maybe fix his car.
Well, he
It's a
probably did it
Corolla.
because it probably went to the record company.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the other
that's
thing.
right.
So this
So
is
that changed.
this is the other weird thing, is that that's not, what I said is the artists are getting paid a fraction of a cent. But these streaming companies have not just agreements with major record labels, but most of the time the major record labels are shareholders in the streaming companies, which is a thing that's not widely publicized. But you know, our distributor is Universal, so we have a record deal. We're an independent, fully independent record label. Universal doesn't get our content until the artwork is done and the master is done. We said, here's the record. You can't tell us the track's too long. You can't tell us you don't like that lyric. You just have to sell it, which is a cool situation for us. It's definitely a temporary one, and we're looking forward to going independent with our distribution as well. But Universal's making almost $4 million a day from streaming payouts, 3.9 million a day. They have, this is just Universal, so you've also got the other big boys like Atlantic and Sony and all this kind of stuff. I don't blame them because their industry has been
They're dying.
completely neutralized, right, from the piracy epidemic and all this kind of stuff. So they're just kind of like clinging on to this last thread of trying to make money. $4 million a day is a lot of money, you know. I mean, that's not
But
insignificant.
so are you like how most of the New Zealand musicians that I know, in the end, they're not making money by making albums or putting it on SoundCloud or putting on Bandcamp, and really the strength for live musicians, and this is may differ in terms of who you are and what kind of artist you are, but as a live musician, is it through playing live that you are mostly making your income?
Yes, but this is not this is not a sustainable thing. You know, the idea that the only way that I can make money is by taking my body and putting it on a plane for 16 hours at a time, and then playing a gig, and then sleeping 2 hours, and then going to another place, and then doing this. A human being can't do that 365 days a year, right? I mean, I've been doing that for like 10 years, and I really feel like I have the body of like a 95-year-old man. Like, I have back pain. I mean, really, you know, and the guys in the band, if you talk to the guys in the band, it's like, and then you get sick. Like, what happens when you get sick, you know, or if you develop a health issue, then you can't tour anymore. Also, by the way, in order to tour, you have to make records, and records are not free to make. Family Dinner 2 cost us $250,000.
But the YouTube videos is how you penetrated, I think, to New Zealand.
Yes.
You don't necessarily have to make albums now. You have to just do what
You have
you
to
bought was
create
live
content.
music, and you put it into a
Right.
visual medium. And do you not feel that that's where the Snarky Puppy then just lifted up past the ceiling?
We have used this platform,
Yeah.
not streaming in terms of YouTube. We used YouTube to develop a fan base, and then we tried to sell our concert tickets and our sheet music and whatever, private lessons or whatever to our fan base. So we have kind of like Jimmy rigged this super unethical thing that exists, and kind of been like, all right, we're just going to use this to our advantage the best that we can, you know. But that doesn't mean that it's right. I mean,
And it doesn't mean there's alternatives either, is there?
Well, this is the problem, is that technology is advancing faster than the legislature, right? There's new streaming services popping up, and then they're just legal because of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So dig into this stuff. This stuff is super important because it's ultimately affecting how you get your pennies, or fractions of pennies, as the case may be. But so we've used that thing, but I mean, like I said, Family Dinner 2 was the most expensive record we ever made. The Metropole record, that cost $120,000, 120,000 euros, which now is like $120,000. But Culture Vulture, the last record we just did, was much cheaper. That was like $50,000, but it's still $50,000. Do you know how many streams we need of Culture Vulture to make $50,000? But wait, there's a marketing budget. The marketing budget for Culture Vulture was $51,000. So actually, we don't even start paying off the $50,000 we spent on the record until we make $51,000. So now we're at $101,000 until I make a single cent, you know, and it's not sustainable. The way that the industry exists at this point, where you have to put music out on these streaming platforms, people don't buy your records, and then, oh yeah, but you'll make your money on tour. You know, tours cost a lot of money. You know, there's a great article.
You don't have to tell us we're from New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. If you guys want to go anywhere, it's like you're immediately paying $1,500 for a flight per person, right? So it's all that to say, you know, I mean, I have my own opinions. You guys, as you get more information about it, or maybe you already have a lot about it, you know, you'll form opinions, or your opinions will change, or whatever. But I think something you can't argue is that the situation right now is not sustainable. There are major issues, you know, and it's kind of in this place where it's like, you know, like in the 60s, like, oh, is acid really bad for you? We don't have the data yet. You know? Like, let's just wait 2 years until people's brains fry, and then we'll know. You know, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Right? The drug is so new, we just don't know yet. And it's not until musicians start going, man, I just spent 11 months on tour, and now I gotta go back out 2 months later, I'm trying to have a kid, or I've got this health problem, or whatever, you know, and then you have to cover your overhead on tour, and then you're expecting any good business, like, has its overhead for its different revenue streams, and then has a plan of profitability for each revenue stream. Now, of course, you have loss leaders, right? So if you're say you have a shoe store, and maybe you put a $20 pair of shoes out for sale for $15, right? You know you're going to lose money on that, but from that person coming into your store, they're going to spend on some other things. So this is called a loss leader, right? You're going to lose money on one thing, but it leads the consumer to other things that make you profitable. You can't call this a loss leader in the music. This is not a loss leader in the music industry. It's a money pit. It's a hole in your backyard where money goes to die. Right. I'm telling you, it is.
So how in the States, because obviously that's the conversation we're not hearing,
Mhm.
obviously it's about streams of income. So you're not just doing this and you're not doing that. We're obviously making nothing from producing
Yeah, yeah.
music. We've been told, it's your calling card, it's your business card.
It is your business
Make
card,
an album
yeah.
so that people can then put you onto
Sure.
things.
Yeah, it's your
But
$100,000
are there
business card.
conversations that are going on, obviously apart from the industry, about developing income stream, different income?
Well, this is the thing, is that if you're a responsible business person, you spend a certain amount of money making the record and you have a plan to make that money back and then some, hopefully. That's how we do it, right? On tour. The problem right now is that you have to take, let's say, coming to New Zealand, there's flights, right? We have to buy flights, right? So we have our fee that we're paid by the Jazz Festival. We have to buy flights, rent backline, blah, 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 right? All this kind of overhead. And in the end, you hope that you come out in the black, right? If you come out in the black, then everybody gets paid what they're supposed to get paid, and then you have a little money that you can sink into your business, like as a bed, right? And this is, any responsible business person on earth does this. You don't just try to come out at zero at the end of everything, like, oh, we made more money than we expected, so we're just gonna give everybody a raise and we're gonna end at zero, right? What happens the next time when somebody misses their flight and they gotta get to the gig and they're doing $0 and you're paying, right? So you have to kind of create this kind of coffer of money. The problem now is that artists are having to pull from their profits. If they profit on a tour, they have to pull from their profits to cover their recording expenses. And then where's their bed? They have no bed. You know? So for us, we're trying to attack this issue by raising awareness, which is why I'm here, you know, and why we're having this conversation. And we're gonna actually host a streaming panel and film it, and ironically put it on YouTube. We talked to some like people in the tech world and also in the music world that are like powerful people who have voices that people I think are interested in hearing, and we're gonna get them together and we're gonna talk about statistics and about this kind of thing.
Are you hopeful about innovation?
Am I what?
Hopeful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that anything that's not sustainable, the art's gonna die.
Yeah.
It's gonna die. And then where are we at? Because Universal's making $4 million a day on what? Intellectual property, on content. Who's providing it? You. And if you can't provide it anymore, they can't make any money. Spotify too. It's like once the content dies, and this is the spiral that we're in. It's like, man, if this keeps up this way, the art's not gonna be around. Right? So
Yeah.
we're gonna try to be proactive about raising awareness, but also, I'm not a passive person. So it's like, okay, well, while we're in this kind of apocalypse of recording stuff, we're gonna start doing online video lessons that we're gonna film and put those for sale. So if you wanna take a lesson in harmony from Corey Henry, it's just gonna be on our website, and you can pick it, or a metric modulation thing from Larnell, or whatever. You know, we sell sheet music, we do education stuff, anything we can to kind of like keep money coming into the organization so these guys can survive, you know, we do. But that's, like I said, you shouldn't have to do that.
No.
You should be able to sit in your house and think about a beautiful idea, a beautiful song, and craft each lyric perfectly, and write every chord the way it's supposed to be, and have